Evangelism, if you're a follower of Jesus Christ, is one of those words that makes almost everybody nervous. Have any of you ever been preached at on a street corner? Just curious. Anybody ever yelled at you and told you were going to hell? How did it make you feel? Great. Have any of you ever stood in a street corner, and told somebody else they were going to hell? Have you ever done that? Anybody? I've done it. When I was a teenager, we thought that's how you told people about Jesus, and we were always so surprised when hardly anybody responded. But the truth of it is, people do respond. People respond to almost anything. When you're watching the slides that are up there, the truth of it is, God uses a lot of different things, and it's always surprising to me. I've told my kids many times, I said, you know what the biggest surprise of the world is that anybody's a Christian. Because a lot of us are Christians or idiots. I put myself in that category. I'm always amazed when God uses me to encourage somebody else. Now, a lot of you don't know me. I'm from Detroit, Michigan. And just for that reason alone, you should be nice to me. We started Kensington Church in Detroit 17 years ago. And I personally talked to 2,000 people, inviting them to start this church with me. And nobody thought it was a good idea. We said, we're going to start a church and we're going to just put it out there for people. We're going to talk about Jesus, and we're going to give people a chance to hear the story of Jesus in a way that kind of relates to their life. And nobody wanted to do it. We ended up with just a handful of people because people are afraid of the E word. People are afraid of evangelism. I am personally nervous sitting down talking to a person one-on-one unless I'm in a relationship with them. You know what I'm saying? Does anybody relate to that? If I've just got to go cold turkey and talk to people, it makes me really nervous. This doesn't make me as nervous because I'm a part of K2. I'm here from a distance, but I've loved you. I've prayed for this church every day from 2 years before it even opened in a public service. I've been praying for Salt Lake and praying for you. So when I come, I feel like I'm in a relationship. You guys don't know this, but 17 years ago when Kensington started, I talked to all these people. They said, no, I don't think I'll do that. Do you know that Dave Nelson was working in a church in Ohio? He was in his early 20s at the time. We had a 15-minute conversation. And after 15 minutes, he went back, quit his job, and came and joined our staff for no pay, living in a stranger's house. Is that not a cool story? Because he thought the idea was cool. And here's what I want to share with you today. Why do we talk about Jesus Christ? Why would we do that? In fact, would you just set that right there? And when I scream, you throw it at me, okay? Why do you tell people about Jesus Christ? There's only one reason. You're only going to do it if it's a good story. Because what do people talk about? When families get together over holidays, or when you sit out there in the lobby, the only things that people really love to talk about are what? A good story. A good story would be like Dave Nelson years ago coming to Kensington, and the fact that he was a cool guy, he was really hip. And you know what bugged us about Dave? Is he never got married. Now, how many of you that are married, you have single friends that it's your life mission to see that they get married? Just let me see a show of hands. And how many of your single friends hate you for that? Let me see a show of hands. And seriously, it's a problem in culture. And so we kept bugging Dave, like, Dave, you need to be married, dude, because you're pathetic. No, we were always bugging him to the point where he didn't even want to be around us because we were bugging him. And so he dated a lot of girls, had a lot of things happen. Well, some years ago, like 9.5 years ago, he was at this conference and he met Susie. And he'd met thousands of girls his whole life. He met Susie and it was like instant love. That was from his point of view. Later we met Susie. He said, Susie, what was it like for you? She says, I don't know. I was at this conference and all of a sudden this guy kept turning up everywhere. I'd like sit down in the row and I'd turn around and he's sitting in the row behind me like this guy's stalking me. Well, it turned out to be a good thing, but it's a great story. That's why you tell the story, because it's a wonderful story. if you're going to talk about Jesus, you'd never talk about him unless it's a great story. And there are two things you need to know about the story that Jesus Christ invites you into. And this is it. First of all, is that here, people don't believe this, is that every person's story matters. To Jesus Christ, your story is absolutely incredible. Right here, I don't know your story, but you've actually stood on street corners and preached to people. Afterwards, I want to hear your story, okay? Because that's a wild story. You're the only person, raise your hand. Now, some of you, you're like kids. You're teenagers, or you're in elementary school. You think, I haven't even lived long enough to have a story. You know what? You might think that, but that's not what Jesus Christ thinks. Because Jesus Christ would look at you, dude, and go, you have a story. And he's interested in it. That's the amazing thing about Jesus. I want to prove that to you as much as I can from John chapter 4, which is one of those moments where Jesus proves that every person's story matters. Does anybody know what John chapter 4 is? It's one of those great moments in the Bible where Jesus encounters the Samaritan woman. In today's modern terminology, it would be like a person from Salt Lake going to hang out with a person from Detroit. Not really, but sort of. So Jesus encounters this woman, and it happens this way. It says, when Jesus decided to go to Galilee, he left Judea and went back to Galilee. And it says in verse 4 that he had to go through Samaria. Now look at this. Look at this verse and tell me what word surprises you about this verse. Had. It's the word had. He had to go through Samaria. Now, if you were to do a little geography lesson, look at the Israel of Jesus' time, you would find that Galilee was in the northern part of Israel, Judea was more southerly, and between them was a community called Samaria, which was made up of people who were half Jewish. And because they were half Jewish, the Jewish people isolated them, ostracized them, and it would have nothing to do with them. So a good Jew, if he was going to go from Judea, which was a Jewish community, to Galilee, which was a Jewish community, he would walk around Samaria. He would do whatever he could to avoid it. But it said that Jesus did what? I can't hear you in the back. He had to go through Samaria. The reason is because Jesus had to hear and engage in the story of this woman. Excuse me, I just spit on you. I apologize for that. There's nobody sitting here. I'm going to speak from here the rest of the service. He had, because he had to find this woman. So here's how the story goes. It says that he came to a town in Samaria called Sychar, near the plot of ground that Jacob had given to his son Joseph, and Jacob's well was there. And Jesus, tired as he was from the journey, sat down by the well, and it was about the 6th hour. Now, for you kids, the 6th hour is a really big deal in this story. Why? Because the 6th hour is what time of day? Does anybody remember? It's noontime. It's lunchtime. Now, if you live in Israel, who goes to the well at lunchtime? Who goes? The answer is nobody. Nobody goes because it's 100 degrees. It's burning. Have you ever been in Israel? It's burning hot. The only the only time you go to the well is early in the morning or late in the afternoon as the sun is setting. That's when you go. But Jesus had to go through Samaria, and he had to be there at noon because there was a story that he needed to engage in, because that's who he is. That's why I personally talk about Jesus, because he's the only guy who intentionally goes to the well at lunchtime, because he had to meet somebody there. And here's what happens. It says, when a Samaritan woman came to draw water, Jesus said to her, "Will you give me a drink?" Now, because this is not the same culture as the culture we live in, this was extremely politically incorrect. The woman knows it because instantly she says, "Wait a second." She says, "You're a Jew, I'm a Samaritan, and a woman. How can you ask me for a drink? For Jews do not associate with Samaritans. You see, Jesus makes himself vulnerable to someone who the rest of the society, of his Jewish society, would have said is absolutely worthless. Not only is she a Samaritan, she's a half-breed. She lives in a community, in a country where we will avoid at all costs. Jesus comes to her with a need. Doesn't say he's thirsty, but we know he's tired. He asks for a drink. The King of Kings and the Lord of Lords. You read the rest of the Gospels. This is the guy who calms wind and waves when people are getting ready to drown. This is the guy who takes a piece of bread and turns it into something that feeds 5,000 men and all the women and children involved. This is the guy that touches a person whose skin is so diseased and destroyed that his nose and ears and his fingers and his toes are worn off because of leprosy. And he touches the person, heals them. This is the same Jesus that comes to this woman and says, I'm tired and I'm thirsty and I'd like a drink. And guess what? It just so happens that you're the only person here who could give me a drink. Is that not a cool story? Jesus had to be there, and he had to be there at noon because he knew no one would be there except for this one person. Jesus is willing to walk through a country to meet one person who everybody else says is absolutely worthless. You see, that's a great story. That's why you tell people. That's why I want to tell people about Jesus. And look what he answers her to her question. He says, if you knew the gift of God and who it is that asks you for a drink, you would have asked him, and he would have given you living water. You see, he's thirsty, but all of a sudden, he taps into this woman because she says, man, I don't even know why you're talking to me because this is not the right thing to do. I come here at noon because I don't want to see people. And you're asking me for a drink, and now you're telling me that there's some kind of drink that is going to satisfy my life. Living water. She says to him, sir, you've nothing to draw with, and the well is deep. Where can you get this living water? Why did people want to talk to Jesus? Because he had a great story going. Hey, I'll give you living water. And as soon as that, I have a bridge that is really high quality in Brooklyn. And I'll sell that to you. And then we'll move into condos. You see, he was a storyteller, but he was offering something that was real, you guys. He says, sir, you don't have anything to draw with. What are you talking about? He says, listen, you can see this on the screen. He says, lady, you see this well right here? This is Jacob's well. In fact, Jacob's well is a big deal in the history of Israel. There's a lot of things happen there. It says, everyone who drinks this water will be thirsty again, but whoever drinks the water I give him will never thirst. Indeed, the water I give him will become in him a spring of water welling up to eternal life. Do you know why people talk about Jesus Christ? Why would you do that? Because for two reasons. One is because everybody has a story. Whenever Jesus engaged people with the matters of life, you know what he started with? He started with their story. He started with their need, and he started with their interest. If people, when K2 started, you know what the core team that started K2 did for a year and a half before this church started? What did they do? Does anybody know? Those of you who are here, what did you do? You just went out and talked to people. And you didn't go, okay, I'm here to tell you about Jesus because you're going to hell. They went out and said, hey, tell me your story because you have a story that is interesting. It's a story that matters. Don't care who you are. It's a story that's amazing. And Jesus then, once he starts to find their story, he says, listen, I got something that I think even with your story, you'd be interested in. You ever been thirsty? You ever dreamed of living water? Now, I'm 50 years old. I know as handsome as I am, it's hard to believe that I'm 50 now. That's a joke, guys. Help me in the back, please. Help me back there. I'm 50 years old, and sometimes I look at my life, and I say to myself, where has my life gone? Has anybody ever said that? Any 5-year-olds ever thought that? Isn't it amazing how quickly life goes by? I'm hanging with Dave and Susie and with Mariah and Ashlyn Dawn and Caleb. Are they not? Have you seen them? Are they not outrageously cute? And their house is total chaos. I remember that and miss it. Because my 3 daughters are grown. My son, who's 13, is here with me this weekend. And I can't believe, I was like, where did it go? It's part of my story. It's like life has flashed by, and I thought, I don't think my story's as good as I hoped it would be. Did you ever think that? Did you ever think you'd reach a certain point and you'd accomplish more than you have so far? You think, gosh, I thought I'd do more than I've done. And like, where's the time gone? Well, listen, this woman, if there was ever a person who would look back and thought, my life's been a waste, it'd have been this woman. So when Jesus said, I'll give you living water, this woman was thinking, listen, all I've had to drink in my life is stuff that's disappointed me. It's been so discouraging. But Jesus starts to weave his story into her story. You see, Jesus had to be at the well at noon because that's where she would be. Jesus had to be thirsty in order to be vulnerable to her. Jesus had to have living water because that's what she needed. You know what? People will drink anything. You know that, don't you? People will drink anything to find out if it's good, if it'll satisfy. Some people literally will live their lives with alcohol, right? Because they're thinking, in this alcohol, there's got to be something that is what? Living. Something that satisfies my soul. Some people will make millions of dollars thinking, this is the thing that's got to satisfy me. We will look for achievement or success. We'll look for anything. In fact, let me tell you yesterday. Yesterday was one of the best days of my life. It was an incredible day with my son. I asked him for permission. When we're at Kensington in Detroit, it's illegal to speak about my children. They've given me don't speak about us. But we're here in Detroit. You know, we're going back to Detroit tomorrow, so who cares? He doesn't care. But we had an incredible day. We got up and went snow skiing in the morning. It was absolutely awesome. Especially if you'd have seen me. It was amazing, incredible. We came back, we watched Ohio State, Memphis on TV. It was, no, not woohoo. I'm from Memphis. It was a non-woohoo, actually, but it was a good game. It was fun. Are you really? Okay. Well, what are you woohooing? We lost. Oh, we did get that far. You're right. For Memphis, that's good. So, but we lost. And then we went and played golf, which is exactly a typical spring day in Detroit. You ski in the morning, you golf in the afternoon. It's awesome. In fact, I don't know why more of you don't move to Detroit. So we just had this amazing day, and then we had, by the way, we had grilled hamburgers for lunch, and then Dave grilled his hamburgers for dinner. I mean, at 50, how many times do you get grilled hamburgers twice in the same day? I mean, it was almost a perfect day. And then, to top it off, Jeff and I went to the movies last night and got there just in time to catch the 8 o'clock show of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Now, is that a perfect day or what? But you know what? You look for days like that because why? What makes a day like that great? Here, I'll tell you what makes it great. What makes it great is because my son and I are in a story together, and we're sharing memories, and we're fighting the snow, and we're driving in the mountains, and we're playing golf. In fact, one of the highlights of the day was playing golf with Steve and his son Nick. I can't think of it. Is it Drost? Is their last name? What is it? Drost. So it's Drost. And Steve's son, Nick, is a junior in an area high school. You're going to be reading about him this fall. He is an amazing golfer. Get his autograph now and keep it. It'll be worth money someday. This guy was awesome. So he's hitting 300-yard drives, and I'm hitting in the swamp. So I kind of lost interest about the fifth hole. So I'm out there digging golf balls out of this swamp. I don't even know the name of the course. It's the nastiest smelling swamp I've ever been in. But I'm grabbing these balls out of the muck and throwing them up at my son. We thought we'd be able to wash them off, but it's spring golf, and so they didn't have the ball washers there. So we had 10 or 12 balls covered in this really nasty swamp. And so I put them in Dave's golf bag. And we got back, and we're getting ready to eat hamburgers. And I don't know how it happened. I think it's my son's fault. But Caleb Nelson, who's 2 years old, walks into the great room at their house like this. And he's got green slime trickling out his lip. And Susie's combing Mariah's hair after they had all showered, and combing her hair, and she takes the golf ball out, and from a distance of a foot smells it, drops it, and is doing this with her hands. Well, Caleb has sucked all of it off. There's just a little bit left. And so I'm holding my son responsible for this. The point is, guys, it's a great story, and it'll be something I remember. I'll remember Caleb someday at his wedding. I hope I'll be there. Of him. But here's the truth. See, that has no point. You're right, it has no point. No, the point is this. People will live their whole lives sucking on swamp balls, looking for living water. They will. People will do anything to find something that'll fill them inside. And Jesus knew that woman, that was her experience, her story, was she had been through it all. Now, she goes to Jesus. Jesus says, I'll give you this living water. This water I give you will become in anyone who drinks it a spring of water welling up to eternal life. He says, you drink this water, it'll be absolutely incredible. In fact, I need a drink of water while I'm telling this. He says, it's not like this water where you drink it and you're going to need to drink it again and again. I'm sorry you guys don't have bottles of water to enjoy this right now with me, but man, that's good. He says but that kind of water, you're going to be thirsty again. He says, the water I give you is it's going to just like be eternal life flowing out of you. And look at what she says, sir, give me this water so that I won't get thirsty and have to keep coming here to draw water. Now think of what she's feeling. She's coming there at noon. And you think of drawing water as hard work. You bet it was. Because that was just, you had to have it. You had to draw it. And she's coming there in the middle of the day in the burning heat because for some reason we don't know until we get to verse 16 where Jesus says basically, listen, before I give you the water, go and call your husband. And she says, I don't have a husband. And Jesus said, you're right. When you say you have no husband, the fact is you've had 5 husbands, and the man you now have is not your husband, and what you've said is quite true. Now here's the interesting part of this story. When I first heard this story taught in a church, I remember the preacher getting to this point, and here's what he said. He said, you see, this woman had lived a horrendous life. She had lived a sinful, horrible life. She was nothing better than he's just ripping on this woman. And I remember being a kid going, wow, what a bad woman she was. Guys, she wasn't. She wasn't a bad woman. Sure, she was a sinner just like you are, just like I am, a person who'd fallen short. But in that culture, a woman who was married 5 times, she had no control over that. All a guy would have to walk up and go, you know what, we're married, but I don't want to be married to you anymore, so basically, I'll say I divorce you, say it 3 times, get out of my sight, you're done. A woman who was divorced 5 times wasn't a bad person. She was a rejected person. She was a person that nobody else said would have any value. I mean, if we took a poll right here today in the service and said, okay, we're gonna work for the next hour, and we're gonna find the most worthless person in this room. Okay, somebody's raising their hand, but don't raise your hand back there. You say, we're gonna find that person. Guys, that's the person Jesus would have to find. That's the point of the story. The point of the story is she's a person where the first guy that married her was married to her for says, no, you're a piece of garbage, get out of here. Next guy goes, okay, I'll try you. You know, you're used goods, but I'll give you a whirl. No, get out of here. 5 times, get out of here. Get out of here. Get out of my sight. You're worthless. Finally, a 6th guy goes, you're worthless, but I don't have anybody. I'm not willing to marry you, but I'll live with you because there'll be some benefits for me of doing that. What do you think this woman's self-esteem was? What do you think her sense of value? Do you think she woke up in the morning, looked in the mirror and go, hey, it's going to be a great day? You think she's doing that? She's worthless in her own eyes. But Jesus had to go through Samaria. And he had to get to the well at noon because he had an engagement to hear and know her story and to let her know, hey, lady, I want you to know something. I know your story. I know your story. And I had to be here today to tell you I knew it. And I love you anyway. So what's your story? Because the only reason I want to tell anybody about Jesus Christ is because I want them to know that their story intersects with Jesus' story. And that Jesus has never met a person, never known a person that wasn't infinitely valuable to him. That Jesus Christ went to the cross to say to you and me, to say, listen, you matter to me. Okay, you're the guy that got chosen last for every sports team you ever played on. You're the kid that plays right field in baseball for 2 innings. Jesus comes to you and says, listen, you are the apple of my eye. You're my guy. And you're a woman who says, well, you can't compete. You're the businessman that has failed 10 times in starting businesses, and everybody thinks, oh, you're a business loser. Jesus is going to walk through Samaria to find you. Because your story matters. Your story is important, and your story is going to intersect with the story of Jesus Christ. You know what I was thinking about? I was thinking how my story intersected with Jesus Christ. And I was thinking about it. If I were 17 years old today, you know what I would speak to you in my own story? I would say when I was 17, I was all filled with self-ego. I probably still am today. But back then, that's, you know, it's like the one person said to me one time, one guy was talking about his life. He said, I may not be much, but I'm all I think about. That had been me at age 17. You know, I was a sinner of my world. And I remember meeting Jesus Christ at age 14 and then again at age 17, where Jesus Christ came and engaged me in my story, and I experienced victory over lust for the first time in my life. I experienced a real change that I wasn't the center of the universe anymore. He changed my foul language. He gave me the strength to say no to peer pressure. It was all part of my story intersecting with his story. Now at 50, it's totally different. Jesus is meeting me where in my late 40s, where I've battled depression. I've dealt with the loss and the grief of the death of my father. I have been successful enough to know that success is empty. See, my story is totally different now at 50 than it was at 17. It's a different story, but it's the same Jesus Christ and the same story intersecting with my life wherever I am in my life. And when I'm 80, the story's going to be different, right? And your story is just as important to Jesus Christ. And so for K2, just practically, if we're going to engage Salt Lake, which we are, what are we going to do? We're going to give our lives to hear and listen to people's stories. Whether they ever respond to Jesus Christ or not. I want people to know, say, listen, your story matters to me. Whether you ever become a spiritual gargantuan or not. Doesn't matter, because your story matters to God. I want you to know that. And then to say, as I listen to your story, let me tell you my story. If you're interested. And to say, you know what? Have you ever wanted for more? The person says no. Okay, I'm not even going to talk about Jesus. But to say, have you ever longed for more meaning in your life? To say that Jesus' story could intersect with your story? That's the only reason you'd ever tell a great story. You're not going to tell it unless it's a great story. Jesus changed my life. I got to tell somebody about that. Jesus loves you and went through Samaria to find you. That's a great story. Caleb Nelson eating a swamp ball is a great story. You see, it's these great stories that get told. Let me just finish with a couple thoughts for you guys today. What does this story mean for us at K2? So who do we tell? And why do we talk about Jesus? Because not only does everyone have a story, but everyone is thirsty. Everyone is thirsty for what? For life. Everyone wants more life. You know, yesterday, all the stuff that we did, hey, in another 2 hours, we'll be done here. We got sunlight till 8. I want life today, don't you? I want something that satisfies my soul. I want to be in relationship with my son. I love being with Dave and Susie. I love what God's doing here. You see, it's all a part of God moving because we're thirsty for life. And here's the amazing thing. As I look at this story, I want to go back and have you just look at one thing with me. It said, Jesus got to the well. He was tired from the journey. I mentioned it before. It never says in the story that he was thirsty. Doesn't. He's the King of Kings, right? He's the guy that turns, a couple loaves of bread into food for 20,000 people, counting women and children. He could pull water out of his hat anytime he wants to, but he comes to the well at noon and asks this woman for a drink because Jesus was thirsty too. You know what he was thirsty for? He was thirsty for a relationship with this person who felt that she was completely worthless. And you know what? Jesus Christ is thirsty for you. Whether you have been a Christian for 20 years or you're just considering it today, Jesus Christ came to this world because he wanted to be in relationship with you and with me. And for the people you're going to rub shoulders with today. Are you going to talk about it? Yeah, you will. If you've experienced his love, if you know how great it is to be loved, if you know how great it is for someone to listen to your story. You ever remember the first time, some of you, you ever remember the first time as an adult you got down with somebody you trusted and you told them your story, the good, the bad, and the ugly? Just nod. If you ever done it with somebody and you're like, I'm afraid to tell anybody this story because if I tell them the truth, they're going to vomit in front of me. You ever felt that way? And for someone to hear your story and to love you anyway, guys, that's what Jesus Christ does for all of us. It's an amazing thing because to him.